Hello everybody and welcome to an improved new episode of the camera follow script. I've noticed that we have a lot of people interacting with this video in specific, and I felt obligated to make another episode that improves the mechanics of the existing script. And also, as you can see, most of my viewerships are from the unsubscribed people, and I would love if you can do just subscribe. It just helps me a lot. It's a small button and you can get all the new details and the videos from these tutorials. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna build an editor script. As you can see in the bottom right, we have an editor script that's gonna help us set up the camera manually instead of copy and pasting all the values as we did in the previous one. Like simple as click buttons and that's it, it's done, and you can view them, you can get back to the player, and you can reset the whole process. Sounds pretty cool, right? Let's go see how it works. So the first thing that I have to do is explain what is a custom editor script. As you can see in the inspector, we have a C# script in here, and then we have a sprite editor, for example, and we have the transform. And with other stuff you get more things like rig transform, canvas. All these things are called inspector scripts, and they're built in Unity, and they have a lot of features, different features. For example, this one has a title and an icon and a drop down, a toggle button, I want to say the camera drop down, an integer, and etc. Everything has different values, and like for example, this one has transform has three vector 3 elements: position, rotation, and scale. And you can modify them from within the script, and they have a different interaction with other stuff. It all depends on the script itself. So what we're gonna do is we have our camera follow script, and want to make it more, I want to say, easy to work with and less prone to problems. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create an additional feature in here that's gonna hide these two vector 3 elements, and we're gonna put some sort of a wizard that we can set the camera positioning or the limits of the camera from bottom left to top right in just simple buttons, instead of just moving the camera here, copying the values, pasting in here. It's gonna be quite seamless, and we'll see how it's gonna work. So first of all, let's open the script. First, we have our own script, which is the same as it was. The first thing we need to do is we need to create an editor script. And editor scripts are basically Unity based scripts, but they're inheriting from what's called Unity editor. So the first thing we need to do is we need to use the Unity editor framework. But as soon as you do this, make sure to have a condition calling in if Unity editor, because if you don't put this and you make a build, and it's gonna come out with with problem that says that this doesn't accept editor scripts in a build. So this only runs inside the editor itself. So next thing we need to do is build the the editor script class. And editor script class is simple, just like the Unity itself, the camera, the model behavior, but it differs from the inheritance. So if we go public class, and the naming is however you want, but not the same name. But what I use is I use the same name, camera follow editor, just to have it more simpler for me. And it should inherit from editor. Then we open and close the curly brackets. So this is the first step, initiating the script, the class, sorry. The second thing is I'm not gonna go in details and talk about all the stuff in the editor scripts, because it's a lot of things: buttons, inheritance, overrides, all these things. But I'm gonna explain what I'm writing and then what's actually gonna be used in this tutorial. So the first thing you have to do is the same as in mono behavior script. We have start and we have update and we have all these things. We have fixed updates. In the editor script, we have a script that works similar like update, which is called every frame, and it's called on inspector GUI. So this script is getting called every time, but we can't just put it like this. We have to go public override void on inspector GUI. Why override? Because it's part of the abstract classes in here. So we have this done. Think of it as an update, so don't get too confused what it does. If you do want to get involved in what does it do in details, you can check the Unity documentations. The second thing is, whenever we create an editor script, it overrides the original script, this one. But before we go ahead, we have to add one thing which I actually forgot, is we have to assign this editor script to this mono behavior script. And we can do this by adding a bracket in here and writing custom editor and opening it here, type off, and opening another bracket here, curly, and we have to type the name of the script. What this does is it makes sure that this editor script is linked to this Unity script, or I would say mono behavior script. So what I was saying is, after we've done these 3 steps, it's gonna override these values. So we have got these 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, also public stuff, right? So they're here. So let it load. Whenever it loads, it's gonna make them, sorry, let's use, yeah, it's gonna make them disappear. Why? It's because we've called this script that shows stuff in the inspector GUI. This is the inspector GUI, and we've done nothing in here, so it actually prints nothing. These values are still here, but they're not drawn on the inspector GUI. So there's a method that we can call to draw the default values of the script itself, and that method is called draw default inspector. That's it. So we save this, we go back here, see, it loads and everything is back as it was. So up until now, nothing is changed at all. The other thing is you can add something here called can edit multiple objects. What this does is it allows you to, if you have multiple scripts of the same one here on multiple places, you can drag and drop all of them and then you can modify them here like this. But it's if you've got, it's for more advanced stuff. So what we have done here is we've enabled the editor script. So we have to actually do the next steps. The next steps are assign the, I want to call it mono behavior target script, which is going to be this one. So we assigned it, and then we're going to do, I'm going to write this stuff abstractly, and then we're going to go dive in details on all of those steps one by one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide these two vector 3, and I'm going to write a title, indicating the like it's a control panel or a settings panel. So it indicates the settings of the camera, and underneath we're gonna have 2 conditions. One of them is if we haven't set the values of the camera, we're gonna have a big button that says start setting the values or something similar. But then if you have the values set, it's gonna display the minimum x and the maximum x, minimum y and the maximum y, and as just a display label. You cannot modify them by clicking. So that will make sure that we can by mistake change the value itself. But then we can also preview that minimum value and the maximum value. I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm just going to explain the full picture and then we're going to go in step by step. So we've got two conditions when we have the value set and the values unset yet. And also I'm going to create the mini wizard, which instructs us what to do and how to set the values with proper buttons and text in here. So with those explained, let's continue writing the comments. So first of all, we assign this stuff and then check if, let's say, values are set up or not. If they are set up, display the minimum and the maximum values along with preview button. So that's it. Also have a reset button for the values, which is going to reset everything. If they are not set up, display a start setup button. So in here, when we start setup, we have to have two phases, like step 1, set up the bottom left position, or I'm going to say the bottom left boundary, which is going to involve the minimum values, alright? And then afterwards, step 2, I don't like it here, it's just, yep, like this. Step 2, set up the top right boundary, which is going to be the maximum value. What this means is, first of all, we set up the bottom and left, which is the minimum X and the minimum Y. So we set the camera manually, and then we click a button, and then we set the manual somewhere manually, and then click a button, and then that's it. It's set up, and the camera resets the player, and that's all. So after this is set up, step 3. Actually, there's no step 3, so it's basically, yeah, let's keep it step 3. Reset the camera camera view to the target and show the result of the setup. That's it. So we've got some work to do in here, but this helps us start going. Alright, so the first thing is we need to assign this script. So there's an easy way of doing this instead of going get, all these things. The editor has a script, has a variable called target. So target is the object being inspected, which is this one. It comes back as a type of object, as you can see. Okay, where is it? Target. So it comes back as an object. So what we can do in here, I'm going to go here and then make a variable called script equals target. So we have the target, but we have to cast it. We have to name it camera follow. So with this, what's going to happen is we take the target and we cast it as a camera follow, which is this script, and we put it in scripts because we need to use it later on. So the first thing is we need to check if we have set up the values. So how would we know if we set up the values? We don't have a default values for not setup and setup because it's a vector 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to create public boolean setup complete. Alright, so by default we keep it false, and what's it gonna do is I'm gonna keep it public because I need to access it from outside the script in here, but I'm gonna hide it in the inspector. And the other thing is actually that's the first step. So what we can do is we're gonna go if we have to check this boolean by accessing this script dot setup complete. So we have this in here. So if the setup is complete, we do what we want to do in here, all these things. And then if it's not, let me put these things in here. just this as a comment, and these stuff are all inside. Here we go. So when the setup is complete, we show the values. So now we're going to start accessing the editor GUI elements. The one we're going to use, which you should use also because it's quite simple. You don't have to know about all the editor elements, but we're going to use a label, a button, and what's it called? A layout. Not a layout. It's a sorting sort of a method which groups up a lot of stuff in horizontal or vertical layout. So let's start first with the label. So before we have everything set up, we have to write the label on top, which is going to say, for example, like camera settings or limit settings. So let's go ahead and go GUI layout dot label. So in here, in label, as you can see, it has, first of all, we don't need the image. We have a text string, and what's it called as GUI layout options. This options means you know, the the settings of the text itself, like you want a bold, italic, the alignment, all these things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put first the label itself. I'm going to call it camera bound or limit, actually boundaries settings. Let's just make it more cute. Add these things in here. Here we go. So if I add this as it is, it's gonna write the script, the text in here, but without any styling or anything else. Another thing I forgot to do is hide these values. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hide the minimum maximum. Hide from inspector. Here we go. So we don't have to have any problems with setting them up. Also, we have to add the same condition in here, which is if editor, and at the end, and if. Here we go. So we added the text. We need to play with the, the style of the text. There's an easy class called GUI style. I'm going to call it style and then initiate it. This one can be applied in here to modify this text. So we go style. I'm going to go font style. I'm going to use it, make it to be bold only. And I'm going to make the size a little bigger. Font size, let's see how much. Let's go with 24. And the alignment should be in the middle. Yep. Middle center, exactly. So let's see how we've set up these things. All we have to do is we have to assign it here in the method, a style. And if we go back to the editor, let's wait for it to load. All right. Oh, that's a really big size. So apparently that's more than I need. Let's go with 10. Let's see. Still loading. All right, 10 is way too small. Let's go with 15, and I think that's gonna be a decent size for the text. Let's see. Yep, that's good. So camera boundaries, it's in the middle, but what I want to do, I want to add small spacing in here. There's a method that we can call also. We can put it before the text, because what happens is this is more of a procedural. So if you add another script text underneath this, it's going to come underneath this one, and etc. And whatever is up is going to be over. So there's a method called GUI editor, or actually GUI layout, that's space, and it has a pixel count. So I have no idea how much is it going to be. Let's just go with 20. Let's see if it's decent enough space. All right, that's good. We have this small area in here, empty. That's fine. So we've set up the space, blank space, and we've set up the title Now we have to do stuff inside. So let's jump ahead first to the easy part, which is what if are the values set, right? So if we have the values set, all we have to do is display them. To display them, we have to put, so I want to do it this way. I want to write like a minimum, like I'm going to title it called minimum values, maximum values. I'm going to write here x equals, something, and then in here x equals something, and then for the minimum of a y equals something, like minus 20, y equals 205, and underneath this I'm gonna put a button, call it view minimum, and here view maximum. What this button is gonna do is it's gonna snap the camera to that position of the minimum, so we can see where is it exactly set up. Let's say you set up everything, and then next day you come, you want to see where was it, or like you want to make sure if it's correct or no. When you click it, it's going to go there. And underneath this, I'm going to have a big button called focus on target. Okay, so let's have this here. So this one will basically reset the camera view to the player itself. Like if you're looking here on the minimum, or like you click on it, it's going to get back to the player or whatever. And eventually, actually let me copy this one. I'm going to add another button called reset values. So this one will reset all the values of the minimum maximum, and then it will disable the setup complete and let us go into the wizard here. So that's good setup here. So let's start with the first things, the titles. So if I put this label and then the label underneath, it's gonna come up as this minimum, something like this. It's gonna come here and then maximum like this. But we don't want it to be, grouped like this. We want it to be grouped horizontally. So there's a method we can use for this. Begin horizontal. So begin horizontal means it opens. So it opens a group, or when I say a start end of the values, and then whatever is inside this up until GUI layout the end horizontal. Whatever is inside of those are gonna be sorted like this, vertically, one by one. But we need only 2 elements, so let's add the same label because we need to, without the style. Let's add the first one, minimum values. Let's see what we get. Like minimum values. Let's do it like this, and then let's add another one. Call it maximum value. So these will be sorted on the same line. Let's see how it looks. We're building the editor slowly one by one. Wait, I think I used the wrong thing in here. Oh, of course. Okay, let me enable this by default. Because we have this 0 by default, so we can see whatever we're doing here. So what I'm going to enable it for now. And you can see here that we have these values set up in here. What I want to do is, I want to create another style, call it, this one, let's change it to title style. Okay, let's make another style here, call it, let's say, let's just call it default style. Because I don't want to do, I don't know how big is this one going to be. I think if we make it as 12 is enough. Not bold, of course. So we make it as it is, and we add this stuff in here. Because I want this text to be aligned in the middle. So let's see how it looks. they're here. Okay. Yep, I mean, that's fine. They look decent. Minimum and maximum. There we go. So we've set up these things in here. So we have this thing part done. The next is these two values. We're going to use the same structure. We need begin and end, but we're not going to put this text in here. We're going to put something else. So let's have this text dynamic and write x equals, and here, which is going to be the second one, we're going to write it the same thing, x equals, here we go. So what's going to be in here is the minimum value, right? So we click in here. We have to access the minimum value of this, the setup that we've done. Now we're working assuming that we finished the setup. Minimum script dot minimum value dot x. That's it. Let's copy this here. But here we're gonna have the maximum value script, the maximum value dot x. So we're gonna have the minimum x and the maximum x in here, and we can access them, as I said, from the script here, the one that we got from the target, which is the same as the script. That's good. So we've set up this part. Let's set up the y part. It's exactly the same thing, but instead of minimum x, it's minimum y. So we have got the y set up. The next thing we have to do is the buttons. So we have two buttons in here. So we're gonna use the same structure. Okay? But we're not going to use the labels. Instead, we're going to use the GUI layout button. And this button is basically a Boolean method. So we have to put it like this and give it a name. Let's call it view minimum. Alright? And we close it. But if we put it like this, we can't have listeners to the button. What I mean by listeners is what happens if I click on the button. So if you hover over this, you see it has a Boolean return value, which means we can put if and then the whole button inside and then have another curly brackets in here. So what happens if we click on this button, we do blah blah blah. So let's add another button called view maximum. Those are basically these two buttons. So what happens in here, snap the camera view to the minimum values. The same thing here, maximum values. How to do this is quite simple, because we have the camera and we have the values. So we just change the camera position, that's all. So we go camera.main. We have to bear in mind that we need to have the camera as the main camera. Otherwise, you have to manually assign the camera in here and then access it through the script. But I'm gonna go with the main camera. Transform that position equals. We need to put it to the minimum, which is exactly inside the script, that minimum values. That's it. That's as simple as it is. The same goes here, maximum values. So we got two buttons. We've got the X and Y values and the title of them. And if we open this inspector, we can see our work, evolving. Here, see, we have the minimum values, their X and Y value, X minimum, X maximum, Y minimum, Y maximum. And if I click here, it's gonna move this camera, which is the main camera, to that position. See this way. And the maximum here. Actually, I put the maximum in here, so if we increase the value more, it's going to become a different place. We're almost there. The other button I'm going to do is, let's copy and paste this one, is focus on player. Or target. Focus on target. What this does is resets the position towards target, which is going to be this fox. So we have to pay attention into one detail in here. So the fox is set up in a different z value. Like the camera is in here. It has the -10 value of z, whereas the fox is 0. So if we set the position to 0, it's going to go inside. So we have to make sure that we give it the fox position, but we use the offset of the camera itself. One way to doing this is quite simple, is that let's get the position first. So we get the vector 3 target position. Here we go. And we take it from the script that target that position. Here we go. So we got it here. All we have to do is we have to set the value z of it to whatever we want. So you can have a constant value set up in here somewhere. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the minimum or the maximum value z, because they both are the same. I mean, assumably the same. Has to be the same because you're playing the same game. Target position dot z equals script dot minimum dot z. So since the z is similar in the minimum and the maximum, what I mean is this value, not the distance from the screen, or I want to say z buffer value, not the x and y. So since we set up this position in here, we go ahead and modify the position of the camera to match the target position. So we've got this. The last element is reset camera values. First of all, reset the setup complete boolean, reset the minimum maximum vector 3 values, and I think that's basically everything that we need. So in order to do these stuff, we can either write them in here, or we can create a script inside this camera follow. And I'd rather make it in here, public void reset values, because all the stuff that needs to be modified are in here. So what we can do is we have to reset this one equals false, and the minimum and the maximum, I'm gonna put their values as vector to 0, which is the zero the easiest thing to do. Here we go. So we reset these values, and then we reset the setup. So let me hide this one now, keep it hidden. Whenever we click on this button, we don't have to do these things first. We just call script.reset values. So it does both these two things. Reset the view to the target. So we finished our, first condition, which is showing the values and then, previewing them and reset them. The next thing is we have to build the wizard. So in order to build the wizard, we have to make sure that we keep track of where we are right now. What I mean is we have steps, or I want to say, current state. So else means we have not set up the values. So we have to have a state of what we're doing right now. And it would be easy to have it here. So I go editor, fields. Let's make an enum. I have an idea of making an enum setup state, right? So first of all, let's make it none. And then none means we have no values, but we have not started the wizard. Let's go step 1, step 2. That's good. What we need to do is also public setup state, all right? Actually, just call it SS. Would be way much simpler. I want to make this hidden from the inspector also, because I don't want to show it. So this state will determine on which stage we are right now in setting the values. By default, it's going to come as none, but I'm going to force check it as none, right? Just to make sure. So when we have no values, we have to check this state. If it's none, else if script.ss equals. If it's step 1, and else if, let me just copy and paste it because it's basically the same thing. If it's step 2. So in step 1, we set up we tell them to, actually no, hold on. It's the opposite. If in setup 1, we set up the value. In step 2, we set up the other value. And then as soon as we finish step 2, I'm going to call this step 0 or step none. Actually, it's called 0. I'm going to write in here show the start wizard button. That's good. As soon as we finish from this part, we disable the last thing. Disable the setup state. Setup complete value. That's it. So we can jump ahead from in here to here. So the first thing we have to do is, whenever we have no value set up, we should show a button. It's simple as this, a button, that's it. So here we go, we have a button, and we're gonna call the button start setting camera values, alright? So what this does, it changes the state to step 1 and write in actually I think that's it, that's all. So we go script.ss equals step 1. So what happens in here, we just have step 1. So basically we're moving from here till here, and in step 1 we're going to show instructions on what to do and a button to set the first, or I can say minimum values. So what we're going to do is, whenever we start the wizard, which is in here, we're going to prompt the player with instructions. And instructions are going to be basically texts. So I'm going to copy one of those, put them in here, and let's write whatever we want. Let's remove the actually I'm going to put this in here outside so we can use it. Yep. Okay, let's hide this one. We don't need it, we finished it. So step 1 we have finished it, step 0 we finished it, step 1 we're at it right now. So let's add the default style as it was before. What we need to do is, I don't think we need to be dynamic, so we have to write select your main camera, and then the next instruction would be move it to the what should we call it the most bottom left or the bottom left? I'm gonna say just move the move it to the bottom left bound limit of your level. I think that's explanatory enough. And then click the set minimum values button. So what I mean is, we prompt the player to select the camera. Let's go here, select the camera, and then move it to whatever he wants, and then click a button. And we have to add the button in here. Let's get one of the buttons so we can use it as a template. And then button, let's call it, let's have it the same name as this one. So it should have the name set minimum values. And what we're gonna do in here, we're gonna basically set the minimum value of the camera limit, and then change to step 2. Easy peasy. So what we need to do is, it's actually the opposite of this. We have to set the minimum values to the current position of the camera that we've moved it towards. And we need to change the SS, which is the setup state, to step 2. So whenever we do this, we move from here till here. And this is going to be basically the same way, but different in here is select, you can move it to move it to the next one, top right. So what happens in here, we set up the bottom left, which is going to be the minimum X and minimum Y. And in here, we're going to set up the top right, which is going to be maximum X and the maximum Y. So we move it to the top right bound limits of your level, and then click the set maximum values button. So whenever we click the maximum value button in here, we set up the maximum value to the position of the camera. After this, we set the state to none, and then disable the setup complete boolean. So what we need to do is we need to make this none, and we have to change the setup complete to false. What this means is we set up both of the values, and then we are ready to get back to this state, the setup state. So if I'm not mistaken, I've done all the stuff without any issues, but let's see. There's always bound to be issues. Let's save everything. Go back in here. This tutorial is a bit longer than usual because I tackled the editor, and editor is not that, it's very sensitive. So right now we have them set up. So let's reset the values. So right now we reset the values. So the boolean is disabled. What we need to do is we need to click on start setting the camera values. So it tells us select your camera, your main camera. Here we go. Select the main camera. By the way, even if you have this script on a different object, it's fine. So what we have to do is select the camera, which has to be the main camera, and paying attention to the Z value. Move it to the bottom left. So let's say this is my level. I want to put it in the bottom left, in a view that does not go outside the view of the game. So this lower part is bad, so let's raise it up, more left. I think that's good. So set the minimum values button. So done, I've set it. Now we have the next step. Select the camera, this one, and then move it to the top right view. So let's go to the most right. I think that's the rightest that we can go. And in terms of top, we have to make sure that it does not go away from here. So this is the most right top, I think. So we set up the most right top, and something, oh god, I've done a mistake in here. This should be true. Enable. Okay, that's a bad thing from my end. When setup is done, it's done. So let's reset this process. Here we go. So we start, let's move it to the left, most left, bottom most left. Here we go. And you can see the results in here. Instead of just copy and pasting, we just click set minimum, and then we go up to the most top. Here we go, and then most right. Yep. That's good. So we set it up. Now, as you can see, now even if you go away from the camera and come back, the values are set. If you click view minimum, it's going to take you to the values that we set in the bottom left, and the view maximum to the bottom, you set the value to the set in the top right. But if you click focus on target, it's going to get back to the player. One thing I want to do also is, as soon as you finish setting up all these things, I want the camera to auto reset to the player, which is going to be done in here. It's not going to be that difficult. It's going to have the same effect of focus on target. So as soon as we finish all this stuff, reset view to player. But one thing I want to do is, I forgot to mention, we've got something called offset, right? So offset is set up manually in here. So right now I'm ignoring it, so let's use it. I mean, it's 0 at the moment, but some people would like it to have, for example, the camera should not be in the middle of the player, should be, let's say, slightly upwards or slightly downwards. It's all depending on you guys. So what I'm going to do is the same thing as we have in here. Yep. Instead of having only this, we go plus script.offset. Right? This should solve this problem. And for me, let's say I want to have the offset. I want to have the camera slightly over the player, not in the middle of the player. Let's have it as 1, okay? So if I go ahead and click focus, it's going to be here. Let's have it 5. See, it's going up. But 1, if I have it 0, it's here. So for me, I want to have it as, 1. That's good. So I think that's everything from now, because I've seen a lot of people interacting with this video, so I want to make it more improved, more easier, and less prone to problems. And that was a really big and rich episode. I hope you all liked it and enjoyed it. And if you do want more scripts on cameras, please let me know in the comments. I would love to make more cameras that follows other players, events, scale up and down, zoom in, zoom out. All these things are possible. But if you guys liked it, let me know. Other than this, hit the like and subscribe. Also, follow my Discord channel to meet up with a lot of good developers, and then some designers and other people, enthusiasts. And that's all from my end. I'll see you everybody in the next one. Bye bye.